And then yeah, I started life in the RAF as an airframe mechanic, and I joined a squadron, no 263 squadron in RAF Stradishul in Suffolk, and that was the start of my RAF life.
And that lasted for a while, am I correct?
14 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I went all over the place. My first posting out of the country was Nairobi. That's a long story, that is. Yeah. Nairobi.
Do you want to explore at all? Is there any highlights you can give us, you think?
Highlights?
Yeah. You can tell it all if you want, to be honest. So if you want to.
And me, skinny me. Our squadron leader War, his name was, he did a trip. They did a supply of milk to Aden, and anyway, on the way back, he radioed that he was going to do the shortest landing ever made in a Beverley, because a Beverley, you can put the propellers into reverse pitch instead of sucking, they blow. And anyway, he dropped it onto the runway, and all of a sudden you heard this horrendous noise, these engines whirring like that, clouds of this stuff everywhere, this dust, and we all stood there waiting for it to come out the other side, this aeroplane. It did, ever so quick. It comes screaming down the runway, round the perimeter track, parked up, and as soon as it parked up, the engines were still running, everything was still running, and all of a sudden the door opened, the crew jumped out. They didn't wait for the ladders, they jumped out. I said, what the hell's going on? What's the matter? What's the matter? And they said, at the back of the aeroplanes, there's a piece of it called the boom. And also at the very end of the boom is the two toilets, and they're bucket toilets. And as soon as he landed on the runway and put it into reverse pitch, everything flew forward, and there was shit everywhere. Urine, oh, it's all down the aircraft, and that's why they all come jumping out stinking of poo. And then we had one night, early hours of the morning, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we was doing an exercise with the army, and doing an exercise over the plains somewhere, and they were doing parachute drops. And of course, like I just said, the airplanes could suck and blow. So when they had to reverse out, there weren't the vehicles to push them out, they had to reverse out. And anyway, this mechanic, he was marshalling this aircraft out backwards, and the pilot was watching him. And there was a young army officer who stood next to me and my pal. And suddenly he says, this army officer, after they'd got the aircraft out and he was going forward again down the perimeter track, this officer stood there, 2 o'clock in the morning, you know. He said, you RAF chaps? We said, yes, sir. He says, that must be a complicated system, he says, from the engines, he says, the gearbox in the engine, he says, all the way down the leg to the wheels to drive them backwards. And we looked at each other and we said, no, sir, it doesn't work like that. What happens is the pilot in the cockpit just flicks a switch and alters the pitch of the propellers. I says, and that's it. Instead of sucking, instead of blowing, it sucks. And he stood there and he looked at us and he says, he says, that's the problem with you RF chaps. You're always taking the piss, aren't you? So we went back into the crew and we told everybody else where the place was in an uproar. You should have heard it. Oh, it was funny. And there was 5 of us. and we planned this safari. We went from Nairobi to into Uganda to Entebbe, places like that, and then we went inland to a place called Murchison Falls. It's a big waterfalls there. We'd camp out just under the stars. This particular night was outside Entebbe somewhere, and we'd all gone to sleep. We got a campfire and everything, and it was amazing. And then about midnight, all these drums started, bongos, these drums. Jimmy, what's going on? And where's Dave? Where's Dave gone? We couldn't find Dave, and we got torches looking around. We found he was fast asleep underneath the car. He couldn't go to sleep. Never heard a thing, not a bloody thing. From there, we went into the Belgian Congo. We went down the right-hand side of Lake Victoria, over the mountains. Anyway, we got the other side of the mountains, and they was travelling through the jungle because we knew of a pygmy reservation that was in the jungle somewhere. Anyway, we come out into this opening. There was all these mud huts, thatch roofs, and what have you. And suddenly there was all these little tiny people running around with bows and arrows and everything. And we stayed for a couple of days with the pygmies. That was an experience with them. They didn't speak English. They showed us how they used the bows and the arrows. They used to live off monkeys, used to catch monkeys to eat them, that sort of thing. And at that time, there was a lot of gorillas in the area as well, but we didn't see them. You know, those silverback gorillas that everybody's been filming over the years since that period of time. And we met a chap there, and he was Swedish, in the next room to us in this mud hut. And we got talking to him, and he was hitchhiking around the world, and he's going to write a book about it. He did tell us the name of the book, but I never remember. Anyway, he left the next day, hiking through the jungle. And then we drove all the way back again through Entebbe, Uganda, and back into Nairobi. And then that was a good, really interesting trip. We enjoyed it, so we thought, right, we'll go again somewhere, and we'll go somewhere different. We decided to go down into Tanganyika, and we went to a place called Ngorongoro Crater, which is an old volcanic area. And in this crater there's a huge game park, and it's full of all sorts. There were some cabins on the edge of the crater. We stayed there one night. When we got back to Nairobi, at the gate, the guard on the gate said to us, "Is any of you called White?" And I said, "Yes, it's me." He says, "Right," he says, "when you get back to your billet, get everything sorted, get all your paperwork done, because you got posted." I said, "Have I?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Where to?" He said, "I don't know, mate." He said, "Go and get your stuff." So anyway, I got posted to Aden, of all sorts, and my parents lived there. And when I got out there, I knew where the flat was, where my parents lived and my sisters lived, so I went straight to the flat. And nobody was in, they weren't expecting me. And I sat on the stairs in this block of flats, and waiting for them to come home, wherever they were. And when they come up the stairs, they saw me, and that was it.